The Bloody Podcassacre with Zac Walters and Kennedy Catherine.
Hi.
And welcome to
The Bloody Podcassacre
with Zachary Walters.
and Kennedy Catherine. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. That was kind of a beautiful intro.
You know what? And for a first time, we really just played that off very well.
Yeah, it was very natural, organic. It's like we've been here and done it 4 times.
Maybe we have.
Maybe we have. That's a secret we'll never sell.
So who are you, Kennedy Catherine? To the listeners.
Recently, I told you that I felt like in this phase of my life, like I was on an apology tour.
Yes.
That's kind of how I feel as a person for the most part right now. I'm figuring a lot of things out. Life has been weird for most of us. I think I've had like a slight lapse of personality, emotional self. I don't know who I am and I don't know what I'm doing anymore, but I do know what I'm doing here. So as a host, I want people to feel confident and secure in my abilities. And I would like low expectation everywhere else.
Can I copy and paste that answer to my bio now?
You may.
I'm Zac Walters.
Who are you?
I am going to copy and paste your answer, but I'm not on an apology tour. I feel like I'm on a vengeance tour.
That's hotter, that's sexier, and that sells better.
You know?
How's it going for you?
No.
No, we haven't felt much of the vengeance that we're seeking?
No. It's building. We're slowly working our way up to the pivotal moment of the vengeance tour.
Right.
And then we'll have the cast party after that.
Now I'd say let's take ourselves on another adventure through the history of horror as it pertains to us as individuals.
So I have a question for you to start off, actually.
Okay.
What is your favorite horror movie? You don't have to give any explanation about it. Just like off the top of your head or even a couple. Maybe we'll go into it in a future episode.
Okay.
Or maybe it's this episode. But what is your favorite horror movie right now?
I have 2.
Okay.
Because I have a right now favorite, which is The Exorcist. I've just become very enamored with the entire world of The Exorcist and all of the sort of lore that exists around it as a baseline. And I don't like admitting this because it makes me sound like a fake horror fan. My favorite horror movie is The Conjuring.
I think The Conjuring is a great pick, actually. I think it tells the story so well. And also I know that you and I are both fans of Ed and Lorraine Warren. It just feels near and dear to my heart. And it was scary. It just hit a lot of checkmark boxes in my...
It did for me too. Because it is also a family story. I liked the emotion behind it. I really loved all those actors. Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga. I will say, recently I saw a clip from it that I kind of forgot about. That's one of the sort of pivotal scary moments. And it
Is
already...
that the clapping scene?
No.
Oh, that's the one I always see going around online.
It's the one of the woman on top of the armoire. It's not aging super well. It's not old in comparison to like An Exorcist, which came out in the 70s and has old effects, but somehow ages well because you know it's old. You're not expecting it. I find that The Conjuring already is kind of aging poorly in that way.
Well, it's wild. It came out 7 years ago, almost 8.
It did?
Yeah.
Oh, God, that makes me want to throw up. So I want to ask you the same question.
My favorite horror movies?
Yeah. Give me your top 2.
Midsummer. Midsommar, as phonetically written out.
Or as the sophisticated might say.
Yes. And then another one that's close and dear to my heart is The Strangers.
Oh, yes.
So good. There's nothing wrong about that movie.
In my head, I never classify those types of movies as horrors because there is no element of fantasy around it. That's a thing that happened.
Yeah.
So it feels more like a thriller, a true to life thriller.
Yeah. Nope. I agree. I definitely agree with that. And that's why I think The Strangers is so scary, is because it's like, that is something that could happen. A break and enter, people are just crazy and they're killing you because you're home or torturing you. My next question is, what do you think your taste in horror is?
I think it's the popcorn horrors that you go to the theater. It's easily digestible and it provides a few jump scares, but it also provides some aspect of an emotional element.
Yeah.
And that's only because movies like the one we're going to discuss today, or something like a Midsommar, or Mother is another really good example.
That was my third pick, is Mother.
You don't feel good when you have to go through that sort of emotional turmoil of like a mother where it actually is affecting to the nervous system. It's upsetting. My instinct is to think then that I didn't like it. Whereas something that's a little bit more easily digestible, I kind of have that immediate sensation of, okay, I've got the thing that I wanted, which is a little bit of an adrenaline rush. The story was good. Those have like a positive, almost childlike feeling and nostalgia for me. Our other ones that we're talking about are the ones that long term stick with me, and I love them the most, but they don't have that immediate positive feeling for them.
I'll get into this into a second, but they're more of like an unsettling film rather than horror per se, and like the whole thing of like it making you think. And it really just kind of racks your brain for a while versus like just jumping in your theater seat and then being like, oh, well, that was fun.
Yeah, it was like an adventure.
I was watching a video about a girl on YouTube reviewing horror novels, and she brought up a bunch of great points. And I kind of think that they can be brought into horror movies as well. But she was saying that a lot of people argue that horror isn't a genre and it's more of a feeling. And I want to know, do you agree with that or do you not agree with that?
I immediately agreed with that and thought that was a really intelligent way of putting it.
Right? Because I was listening to it. I watched it last night and I was like, that is so, like, it's very accurate.
It's almost exactly what I was saying about The Strangers before. I don't immediately put it in a horror genre, but that is a horrifying movie.
But I also think that a lot of people, stereotype is the wrong word, but stereotype horror. And then if it doesn't meet that expectation, they don't like it. So, like, I think when you think horror, it's a lot of jumping, screaming, scared shitless by the end. And if that's not a horror, like, if those boxes aren't checked, that's not a horror. But I think horror is, like, so much beyond that.
That's a really interesting point, because the other day, when I was thinking of movies that I wanted to do for this, my favorite movie of all time, I don't know if you've ever seen it, is Fatal Attraction.
No, I have not.
Probably 1980s, so they're Michael Douglas, Glenn Close. Shorthand of it is this woman has a one-night stand with a man who's married and then stalks him, and they have this sort of like contentious, violent relationship. In the end, she's killed. That movie is not a horror, but it is kind of the first thing that comes to mind when I think of horrifying feelings. And I would absolutely put it in that same camp based on that.
Do you know what this movie sounded like to me?
What?
Did you ever see Obsessed?
Basically the same thing.
That's all I could think about while you were talking about it. And I was like, remember when Beyonce threw Ali Larder off of the railings?
I sure fucking...
into that glass table?
I somehow watched that movie twice.
I've seen that movie a lot, actually, surprisingly.
It's not a good movie.
During the time, I definitely think it was. Now, looking back, boring.
Yeah, it just wasn't original in any way.
No.
And the casting, was it Idris Elba?
Yes.
Wild.
I know.
Anyways, yeah, it's basically the same thing. Did you answer what your favorite subgenre is?
I don't think I did.
Oh, I'd like to know.
I have a soft spot for found footage horror movies, even though 9 times out of 10 they are poorly done. Well, that's not true. There's some very good ones. The problem that I find is that found footage gets into a lot of spin-offs and sequels. Cloverfield, for one. The first movie, fantastic. Loved that movie.
I had no interest in seeing that, and I just sort of ended up passively seeing it when I was at someone's house, and I watched it afterwards. That is such a good movie. It's so well made. I
think it came out in 2008, 2007, but the effects in it are so well done that it looks so real. I also love the whole mystery of never actually seeing the monster and letting your mind explore. That is the best part of horror.
If every movie could have that, I would be happy. Your mind will always conjure the thing that is the scariest to you, and a movie can never do that. It will never appeal to every person.
Half the time, it'll be funny for half the people. And one example is the remake of It. You know, the trailer for that movie, I was so excited for it, and then it just ended up being kind of laughable.
I really like those movies because they give me a sense of nostalgia, and they remind me of 90s kids on an adventure in the summer movie, and it has that feeling for me, and I like it for that, but I agree that it did not scare me.
The other genre that I think would probably be my favorite, I would probably just say psychological horror in general. Because, like, Mother, I would say, falls into that. Suspiria.
Oh, Suspiria.
The Strangers is kind of psychological. It's kind of just like a slasher.
But
it's psychological to a point because you're trying to figure out what's happening as the people it's happening to. But I also do love figuring things out before a movie ends. And I think that I'm pretty good at it.
I'm about 50-50. It depends on so much. I like being able to figure it out beforehand, and I feel cheated if the movie doesn't in any way allow you to figure it out beforehand. Like, if it's completely off to the left and we at no point had any sort of context clues to figure that out, I'm immediately mad.
Mm-hmm. I See You, that one that we both watched separately. It was on Amazon Prime, I think. It had Helen Hunt in it.
Yes.
That was a movie that I figured out the ending way before it happened.
I'm embarrassed to say I didn't.
But that's fine. I never find myself disappointed that I figured it out. It's more of just like I wear it as like a badge of honor. Like, yes, I am so smart, but I love a good surprise ending. That makes sense.
In I See You,
that one had multiple plot twists.
But also I found the reveal confusing. It wasn't made to be confusing.
No, it definitely, because that's the thing is like why I figured it out.
Because it wasn't confusing. Yeah. And also, like, when the reveal happens, it's cut and dry. I just couldn't get my mind to the place that that's what was happening. I was like, no, I've missed something. And I rewound it so far before I was like, oh no, that's just it.
And you know what? That'll happen.
That will happen. So the film that we chose for the first episode of the Bloody Podcassacre was probably one of our favorite movies, both of us, to come out in recent years.
Hereditary. So this film was directed by Ari Aster, who also directed my favorite, Midsommar. Mm-hmm. This guy has a lot of family issues.
Clearly.
You know, even in his short films, all related to family.
I would love to sit down for just a quick family counseling session and see what is going on.
And like where it all stems from.
His mom likes his work. We've discussed this, you and I, that in interviews he said that they're good with it. They like it.
And I'm just like,
how?
Are you sure?
But if you make that much money.
True. You know what?
All will be solved.
Yes. And to do it over and over and over again. Short film, feature film. What's next?
We are deep diving into Hereditary today. And the way that we are going to do things is I'm going to tell you the plot of this movie and we are going to get right into those emotions. I don't know why I said that way. Emotions?
Emotions for those who don't know.
So our film opens with the incomparable, the indelible, the incandescent Toni Collette.
Wow. Round of applause for Toni Collette.
Toni Collette plays Annie Graham. Annie is an artist.
Interesting that you say Graham.
Yeah.
I say Graham.
We do this a lot.
I know, but it's very, because I had my grade 3 teacher's name was Miss Graham. And when people said Graham, I was like, no, it's Graham. Because that's how she said it.
I'm not entirely hearing the difference. I'm saying gram as in like a measurement.
Yeah, and I'm saying like Graham.
Okay.
It's just interesting because different phonetic enunciation, I guess. Do you say schedule?
No, I do not.
Tuesday.
I don't do that.
Pecans or pecans?
Pecans.
Good. That's where we're going to end.
How do you say basil?
Basil? Mm-hmm. Not basil.
I don't
think I've ever heard it say any other way.
Basil.
Oh, no, it's basil.
Okay, so she plays Annie. Annie is an artist who works out of their secluded home. It's adjacent to a city, but they live kind of in the woods. And Annie builds scale models of scenes from her life. She lives with her family, her husband Stephen, played by the wonderful Gabriel Byrne. And they have 2 teenage children. They've got 13-year-old daughter Charlie, played by Millie Shapiro, who is now
TikTok e-girl star.
We open up with the passing and the funeral of Annie's mother, Ellen, who dies of what we can assume is complications from dementia. And this is after a lifetime of a struggle with dissociative identity disorder and a very strained relationship with her daughter, Toni Collette, and what sounds to be just a tragic life. They've had a real hard time. Everybody else in their family is dead.
On the mother's side, yeah.
The father and her brother died when she was a kid. After the funeral, normal life more or less resumes for the family, and Annie seems to kind of want to move on with little interest in learning the truth of her mother's mysterious life, because we learned that there was a disconnect and she doesn't really know a lot about her mother, and at the funeral clearly was trying to vamp throughout that eulogy because she did not know the people in the room.
Yeah, a little vamping, you know?
Just a little improv up there.
A little Wendy Williams Masked Singer vamping.
Mm-hmm. Soon after this funeral, the Grahams suffer a tragic loss.
So you said Grahams there, and I thought you were talking about grandmas.
The Grahams.
Thank you.
They tragically lose another member of the family, as I said. The youngest child, our daughter Charlie. She's killed in a freak accident when she and her brother attend a party together and she accidentally eats nuts, which she's allergic to, and she's having this reaction. Peter's trying to get his sister to the hospital quickly. He swerves on the highway to miss a deer. We've all been there. He gets the vehicle a little too close to a light post, and Charlie's head way too close because she is fully decapitated. As the movie develops and the family is consumed by their grief, we see that Annie blames her son because he was driving the car when Charlie was killed.
Was extremely high.
He was very stoned at the time of his sister's beheading. Annie makes a connection with a woman named Joan, who she met at grief counseling. Joan is grieving her son and grandson, who drowned a few months earlier, and she finds comfort in performing seances to connect to them. She tries to teach this to Annie, who's skeptical, but Joan gives her the tools to perform a seance anyway, which she does with the very hesitant help of Peter and Stephen, who kind of want nothing to do with this. They conjure something, and unfortunately, this causes a string of supernatural events to plague the family. In the end, it's revealed that Annie's mother, Ellen, was part of a cult. She was, in fact, the queen of a cult, whose leader was the demon king, Payman. We also learn that Annie's quote-unquote friend from grief counseling, Joan, was another cult member who was simply helping Annie unknowingly move the plot forward. What the cult needed was for Payman to find a new host in the body of a male in the family. At Charlie's birth, Payman had settled into her body, so nearly everything that happens to the Graham family was orchestrated by Ellen and Joan to right this wrong. After Annie attempts to get rid of the hauntings, her husband Stephen is burned alive. Her own body gets possessed to kill herself before Peter jumps out a window to his own death. Effectively, the entire family is now dead. And Payman uses this as an opportunity to take over Peter's body and join the cult where they bow to him, and the plot is complete.
What a short and sweet little story time.
It's just a little nugget for you. The meat and potatoes of Hereditary, which has 9,000 other details that you really need to watch the movie to appreciate.
For those of you who've maybe seen Hereditary and didn't get it, you're welcome. You know everything you need to know now.
And that's it. That's all. This has been great. We'll catch you next Wednesday.
Yeah, bye. Let's break this down a little bit more.
The movie was reviewed and advertised as savagely scary. I do not agree with that, and I don't think that this movie is going to scare everyone.
No, I agree. I do remember it being advertised as such, although I am biting my tongue when I say this, though. I was scared shitless after I watched it for the first time. Once again, it's unsettling the whole time, but it wasn't like jump scary. There's a few moments where there is like a jump type of moment. I would say 2 max.
Yes.
A quick heart rate moment, like, you know?
But even those, for the most part, you can kind of see coming. Mm-hmm. The whole movie is so goddamn dark. I mean, logistically, not emotionally. The film is shot in a way where it is so incredibly dark that things are kind of existing and lingering, and whether or not you notice them is how much you're kind of paying attention. And also the screen you're watching on, I have found.
Yes. I've seen it in the theaters, at home, on a laptop, and on my TV. It is different every time.
Wildly different experiences.
Honestly, always recommend watching it. People don't like to. Watch it in the dark.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know. Some people would like to watch a scary movie in the middle of the day so they can go about their day and kind of forget about it by the time they go to bed.
That's true.
But watching a movie like that, if you want to watch in the middle of the day, you still have to watch it in the dark.
There is a scene where there is a person, there's a couple scenes where there's people standing or figures kind of in the dark. And I mean, I couldn't see them because of the way that light works.
Yeah.
And how dark the movie is. So yes, no, watch it in the dark. So yes, no is the most Canadian thing I could have said. Let's discuss our favorite scenes in this movie.
I have a couple.
Please tell me.
Okay. Let's start with the first kind of shock of the movie. Charlie's ultimate death and beheading from the lamp. That scene, when I saw it in the theater, I was with 10 people at a cast party. Everybody around me's jaws were dropped. It wasn't marketed for her to be dead.
You've explained this to me, the journey that you went on with that. I didn't do that because I never really got super invested into the marketing. I didn't do a ton of research into it beforehand. So everything that happened was a surprise to me.
Fair.
But you knew about it and you had expectations of it. And that for you was shocking, which I found interesting, that it really wasn't marketed in a way where you would, as an audience, know that going in.
I loved it. Because it's, the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes into the movie? Yeah. And so you're like, where now is this movie going to go for the next hour and a half?
Yeah, because the marketing does focus so heavily on Millie Shapiro that you assume her presence is going to be there throughout the rest of the movie. And in ways it is.
But it's not her character.
No. Her physical presence, like you said, she maybe makes up 10 minutes of the movie that she's present in.
Yeah.
That's it.
going into it, you think she's the star of that movie. So it was a nice surprise when she got beheaded. I mean, not like I was looking forward to somebody getting beheaded, which this movie is full of beheadings. Like
a vast amount of decapitations happening across the board.
But it was nice when that happened in the movie, and it was a nice plot twist that I was not expecting.
So what happens if you haven't seen it is that Peter and Charlie go to a party together. It's one of those situations where your mom is like, yeah, you can go, but are you going to take your little sister? Which, for the most part, the answer is, fuck no, I am not. But they did. And they go to the most absurd party that would have never happened for any of us as teenagers.
Not at all. That house was immaculate.
Beautiful.
For high school students, like, I'm sure your parents are away, but, like, seemed like the whole high school was there.
And it wasn't even just the house. It was the way that they looked and behaved.
Yes.
Beautifully dressed.
They all were so calm. People were laughing, and there was, like, giggles here. They were baking the cake.
Somebody was baking a cake at a high school party. There was people just casually chatting in a corner.
Yeah.
Having a red Solo cup, just discussing stocks.
Probably.
You know what I was doing at high school parties?
I was laying in a field.
Because we weren't in a house. We were in the bush.
Dirt pile in the middle of nowhere.
And if there was a house party, no one was baking a cake.
Never. I watched somebody snort popcorn seasoning off a kitchen counter. There was no sophistication. None. They all seemed like they were at least into their 30s.
There was a lot of casual bed lying, too. Like, a lot of people were just casually chatting in a bed. I think it was a pretty unspoken rule that bedrooms were off limits, but if they weren't, one was a designated room specifically for unsightly sordid activities. And you weren't just casually walking in there. And if you did, no one was just lying on a bed having a casual conversation.
No, never was that happening.
At this party, Peter, who has a crush on a girl at school, he asks this girl to go smoke weed with him. And Charlie, the character of Charlie, we never know what exactly is happening for her or with her, but she is pretty nonverbal. She has some sort of learning disability or cognitive disabilities, which we know more from the script than we do the actual movie.
Yes.
And she does a tongue clicking thing that was used heavily throughout the marketing. And so that's kind of what we know about her. And
that she makes toys.
She makes toys. She cut the head off a bird, tried to make a little model out of it.
We do come to know eventually that wasn't
Charlie.
So
she still does have very human moments. So I wonder if there is a mix of things going on. I wonder if payment is in her body, but also some edge of her personality exists. Because think just of the moment of her at the party, not wanting to go get the cake because they're not giving it to everyone. A demon isn't going to be like, I can't go get a piece of cake. So I think there was a little bit of both.
The demon would want that cake.
A demon would demand the cake.
Me. I am the demon who wants the cake.
Charlie is a mysterious figure.
Yes.
We don't exactly know what's happening with her, but it is a bit of an inconvenience that her brother had to bring her to this party, especially when he's like, I just want to go smoke weed with hot girls. He leaves Charlie to her own devices and says, just go get a piece of chocolate cake. And she does. And these sophisticates who made this cake cut up some pecans.
Sure, why not?
A little tree nut.
Throw them in there.
Just some trail mix.
Once again, why? What is the purpose of these children's lives?
Why and also how?
And I would never think to be like, this is missing walnuts or any sort of nut in this chocolate cake. Good on them, but fuck you.
Also can't be trusted.
No.
I don't trust anything that's happening there. And Charlie shouldn't have either because she ate the cake, had an allergic reaction.
Also, she couldn't see a fucking nut in the cake.
I have a lot of questions about that too. Was this like a ground flax situation? Oh, we have nut flour. Are you vegan?
Vegan plant-based diets.
It was a peanut-based cake.
Yes.
And that's how Charlie died.
Can't do anything right.
Won't kill animals. Sure will behead a 13-year-old. So she has this...
We love vegans.
I was one.
I'm a vegetarian.
Just want to make it clear.
Yeah. We love them.
I feel like it's that thing of I'm a lesbian, so I can make fun of lesbians. I was a vegan, so I can make fun of vegans. I get it. We were insufferable. Anyways... but you're doing the right thing, everybody.
Yeah. Continue with your beheadings.
Love that for you. So Charlie's having this reaction. She goes and finds Peter, and it is terrifying. It instills that panic of those moments for you. I have to handle this. This is an emergency that requires me to be the hero, and I will fail. And he
Peter.
did.
Yeah, Peter full-fledged failed the situation. Like, if this was an exam, they weren't letting him back in the school.
He done fucked up.
He tried. He really, though, tried. It's not like he just, like, sat there and let her die, but he did.
In fact, he killed her violently.
Yes.
But the entire sequence of events, from her having this reaction to them getting in the car, the speed of the car, her rolling down the window,
her
she's
gasping for air,
thrashing in the backseat, it puts your body on high alert.
Because, well, we've been in situations like that.
Yes.
And so we know what that's like. And that's like the real horror, I would say, part of this movie.
Yeah.
Is watching real people go through real situations. Grief, trauma.
Demon overlords.
Beheadings. All the regular Monday to Friday shenanigans, truly.
You know what? If I had $1 for every time
I
someone
saw a demon.
desecrated my mother's grave.
We'd be rich.
So that is a pivotal scene. The part that for me was incredibly moving and also shocking is Peter gets home after Charlie has lost her head.
But even she loses her head, he's still on the road.
Yes.
Go back a little bit.
Her head comes off, but her body is still in the back seat.
Rigor mortis kicking in.
And Peter knows what has happened. Doesn't really want to look in the rearview mirror. In fact, he doesn't.
He starts, and then his eyes are like, back to the road.
Yeah.
Hands on 10 and 2 on that wheel.
He's looking forward. He puts that car in a drive and goes on his way.
Goes home.
He gets home. He walks in the house. You can't really hear this, but because I watch everything with subtitles, I was able to see that the parents have an exchange when he's walking through the hallway to get to his room. Toni Collette says, "Oh, good, they're home." And Steven says, "Good." And then they go back to bed. Because that was something I was thinking about when I was watching that movie a lot, is that when I was a teenager and lived at home, I know my parents were aware of when me and my sister were gone and when we were home. And I thought it was weird that both the kids left the house and then neither one of them so much as checked or didn't notice that Charlie was home, especially because we know Annie, the mother, was calling Peter and he wasn't answering his phone.
And also, this is probably the first time that they've gone out together. That Charlie's probably gone out into a social setting without one of them, the mom or dad, with her. So it is odd that they're just like, oh, she's home, good night. But maybe that's just their parenting style.
Yeah, they seem a little lax. And they're also very rough with Charlie, but whatever, that's a whole other tangent. So then Peter goes and he lies down in bed, but he does not go to sleep.
No.
And we have our Ari Aster transition. You talk about it because you love this.
Ugh, I love a good Ari Aster transition from either dark to light or light to dark, where it's just focused on one single subject and it passes time in literally the snap of a fingers and goes from night to day and the character doesn't move. I think it's beautiful. They do it with the house twice, actually. They do it with Peter going to sleep. They do it in Midsommar a couple of times. And it's so quick and so effective. He goes to sleep. Well, he goes to lie in bed, changes to day, and he's still awake.
And we can hear that Annie is downstairs making coffee, having breakfast, having a conversation with her husband. And then she says she's got to go somewhere. So we hear her, because I assume Peter's window is open. Yeah. We hear her go outside, lock the door, unlock the car, which if I was Peter, I wouldn't have locked the car. Car door wouldn't have been closed.
Nope.
I would have walked right into that house. Car wouldn't even have been in park. It would have hit a tree.
Yeah.
Gone.
I probably would have just left the car on the road. Walked home.
Yeah.
Nobody get in a situation with us where you were in the backseat of our vehicle.
Your head will be on the side of the road. The car will still be there. I'll be in the next country.
Yes.
I never stopped walking. I didn't call anyone. Toni Collette opens the car door and...
Do you think that she opens the car door? Or do you think that she just sees... Because the window, presumably, is still unrolled. The body probably is still hanging from the window. And there's probably blood down the side of the car.
Based on the way that we have seen the setup of the house before, it seems that she would have exited the house and walked directly to the driver's side. Charlie's body was on the other side.
Yes, on the passenger backseat.
So I kind of imagine it in the way that she would have opened it, but it depends. Like, I don't drive a car. I drive a fairly large SUV with tinted windows. So if something was in the backseat, if someone left a body in my backseat, I would not know until I was seated 10 and 2. So I think she probably opened the door.
Yeah.
And got a real good close-up. And she screams, and we get another amazing transition of her screaming from finding the body to her in her bedroom on the floor, all fours, screaming, crying. I want to, like from the depths of her soul, I want to die. I just want to die. I can't stand it. She's screaming Charlie's name, which is heartbreaking. It sends chills through my body every time. And I've probably watched this scene upwards of 10 times.
Peter is still in his bed. Hasn't moved. Has he ate? We don't know.
Probably not.
Probably hasn't even faced... Well, I'm sure his parents probably came to his room, but that was it.
And we've talked about this before, that I was saying, you know, I have failed myself in emergency situations before. I have realized that I'm not the person I thought I would be, but I do not think I would ever allow my mother to be in that situation. I don't think that my brain could get that far away from me.
Do you think that... It's very interesting because I don't know how it would play out, but do you think he would ever be charged?
Criminal negligence. But
yeah,
that's such an accident.
Yeah, that's true.
Leaving the scene of the accident, maybe, but I think that they would...
And also driving while intoxicated.
Yeah, but they wouldn't know that because they wouldn't have gone to him in time.
But also, you know, I think... Because there's a point where you're like, well, why wouldn't he call the police or an ambulance? Well, it's like...
Her head is gone.
There's no saving it. Like,
no.
There's nothing to do in that situation other than just move forward. That sounded so dark. Let somebody else have trauma.
Oh, what I was going to say, though, is that the transition from Toni Collette finding the body actually doesn't go directly into her being on the floor. It cuts to her screaming over top of a daytime shot of Charlie's head as it is the next day on the side of the road. Very intact, her head. It's still...
Her jaw is gone.
For sure. We can see her tongue, kind of. There's ants, maggots, everything around her head.
I wonder, this is going to sound gruesome. The trajectory of which her head hit the pole. Do you think that it clipped the top of her head and took her head off based on where the jaw is located? So I'm picturing rips her cheeks off. And the jaw downwards is still connected to her body?
Yes.
Or do you think it's her neck that was taken off?
Well, this is what doesn't really make sense. It is the cleanest break in history.
Yes.
There is no portion of her neck that exists with her head. It is as if the pole hit her directly under the jaw and just...
For all we know, there could be something that the cult put there. They did put the little symbol.
It looks as if it almost got like a dragged motion, which I guess could have happened to some extent.
Because he was going very fast trying to get to the hospital. So, anyways...
That part, because it cuts so immediately and it is shocking. You don't see a ton of that in a very realistic way in horror movies. You see a lot of, you know, campy slashers and stuff like that.
Like, you know, with a lot of horror tropes to it.
Yes. To just actually see a disembodied head, shocking.
Yes. And it was covered in maggots and ants.
The ants.
Ugh. That is a good, very good number one scene. Early on, checks all the boxes.
This is one of those scenes in the movie that's really pivotal where you know, okay, we're going somewhere from here. And it almost feels every time like it could be 5 different ways and it could be 7 different subgenres.
100%. And I like it.
So tell me about your second favorite scene, which is actually your first favorite scene.
Yes. Which I know it's also your first favorite scene.
It is.
Because we love this. Is the iconic, and it's not even scary. Well, no, that's a complete lie. It is terrifying.
Because it feels...
If you were in that situation, I've been in that situation.
You killed your sister.
No, I am not. I've never had a sister.
Oh, the grief of your parent and also them blaming you for the death of your sibling?
Yeah, no.
It's a niche.
Yeah, very, very niche market.
Listen, if you felt it, write in. Tell us how you felt about this scene.
Please send us an email at thebloodypodcassacre@gmail.com.
If it wasn't for this scene, there would be so little emotional payoff in this movie.
I agree.
You need this.
You know also now her parenting towards Charlie and how it, like, more in depth versus what you've seen.
Right.
And just how she is, like, as a person overall.
Can you break down this scene?
So this scene is kind of like, you know, middle of the movie, I would say. We've had a lot of just, like, tension building in between the relationship of Peter and of Annie and Stephen, who's just been on the sidelines, kind of playing it safe and be on both sides. He's
been a supportive husband to Annie, but he's also taken on the emotional labor of being pretty much the only parent in the house that can actually be there for Peter because Annie has so completely closed herself off to him.
For all the right reasons, also. It's dinner time. Stephen has made dinner. They're all sitting around the table. Annie comes in and she's talking about how she wants to make dinner and she'll get it ready, but Stephen has 10 steps ahead of her. They all sit down to eat. And the tension is at an all-time high.
Palpable.
Before we get into it, But there's just like little like pity conversation happening between Peter and Annie.
Petty conversation happening.
Did I say pity?
You did.
What a pity. I don't even know if I'm describing this as well as it should be.
You can't and you won't. And that's something that we both need to accept and acknowledge, that we can't do this justice. You have to see it. It is so incredible. But yes, you're setting the scene well. There's a lot of petty things happening between Annie and Peter. Annie is just scoffing at everything. Peter is in the position that I was in when I smoked at my mom's kitchen table as a 16-year-old, burnt a hole in it.
Kennedy.
To have to tell her that was the most terrifying thing I had to do at that point in my life. A couple years later, when I crashed my car, and just like having to admit something to your parents that you have so severely fucked up is such a terrible feeling. And you spend so much time just trying to have a positive conversation or experience with them to try to create some sort of normal energy between you. That is what he's doing by being like, oh, Dad, this is really good. And it's sweet. And he's trying. And she is rolling her eyes, having absolutely none of it. And this is not the first time that we see this from Annie. You kind of get the sense throughout the movie that Annie probably doesn't have the most mature coping mechanisms. She's a little bit petulant. She's just childish. Like, there's a scene where we find out that she has been sleeping in the treehouse. She packs up her stuff to leave the room after Steven has kind of reached for her. And she just fully pulls away from him, gets her stuff to go sleep in the treehouse. And he says, okay. And she goes, well, is it okay? It's like, Annie, you're doing the thing. And that's what she's doing in this scene too. She is creating an environment that is so toxic and then feeling upset about it.
Wow. You really hit the nail on the head there.
Thank you.
So, after all this little petty chat, they finally start going at it. Peter thinks more that Annie wants release, but Annie knows that it's the other way around. And that he wants...
Yeah. He wants her to release him.
Yes. And it blows up. Which comes to the best part of Hereditary, which is Toni Collette's speech. I can't.
You can.
Peter wants her to say something. She's like, no, I don't want to say anything because I've said and tried to say everything that I wanted to say. And she asks Annie to release herself, but Annie turns it back and says to release you, obviously meaning...
I don't need this. You need this.
Yes. Here you go. A write-off. Sorry that you killed your sister and my daughter. Toni Collette completely blows up, stands out of her seat. Her facial expression in this is terrifying.
It is. And she's a beautiful woman.
Yes. You expect her face to get really red because she's screaming so loud, but it never really does. But she gets into the iconic line, "Don't you swear at me, you little shit. Don't you ever raise your voice at me. Do you understand? I am your mother." And I think my favorite part of it is when she starts using different emphasis on the end. Well, because she talks about how, you know, like, she wishes that this moment could have brought them together as a family, that it would have done something for them, but no.
Can you just deliver the line? It's so good.
Well, first, she wishes that Peter would have just said, "I'm sorry," or anything. The part that is so good is when Annie says, "But you can't take responsibility for anything, so I can't accept and I can't forgive because nobody admits to anything they've done." And Toni Collette should have been nominated for this specific role, and she wasn't, and she was robbed. We
will acknowledge that on this year, the person who received the Oscar for Best Actress was Frances McDormand for Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which was very deserved. Toni Collette, Frances McDormand, kind of interchangeable. I like them both to exist independently. I need them both, but kind of interchangeable. But Toni Collette, at the very least, should have been nominated. I think a lot of people felt that way.
Yes. And it's because horror gets snubbed a lot of the time. Very rarely will it come up in the Academy, which in the end, do we really care about the Academy? No.
Like all institutions, it was built by white men.
An award doesn't mean really anything at the end of the day, but it is nice for recognition. So it was nice to see Parasite win Best Picture. The last time a horror movie won Best Picture, could I tell you?
I think it was...
The Exorcist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But The Exorcist didn't even win Best Picture.
Did it win Best Picture?
Either way, back to this scene. It is so effective for the reason that they could have made Toni Collette so cruel in this. She says, "I know you're in pain and I know that you've lost your sister too and I wish I could take that from you, but I can't." without that, I think I would have gotten lost in her cruelty. I think I would have just thought, you're not trying, you're being awful to this person who's clearly going through something horrible too. But they don't do that. It's just like, we're both in this and it's fucking awful. And we both need to acknowledge that if we're ever going to have some semblance of a life.
And to heal and move forward. Truly the best scene in this whole movie. I could probably watch this or listen to this falling asleep.
Another iconic line from this monologue, that fucking face on your face.
Oh, because you've been there.
So many times.
When you don't know what to say and you just kind of say the same word or you say a sentence that doesn't make sense.
It's not even so much about not knowing what to say as being so angry that you can't get your words. So you just start saying anything.
Yes.
And you're repeating yourself. That fucking face on your face. So good.
And you know what it means, but it's just like...
What are you saying?
Right?
So the next scene, that isn't really a favorite, and this is going to combine a couple of things, but it is so pivotal to the movie, is that Annie makes this connection to a woman in her grief counseling. And the first time she meets her, she's in grief counseling for her mother's death. When she goes back, it's after Charlie has died. She doesn't actually make it into grief counseling, and she just gets stopped in the parking lot by this woman named Joan, played by Anne Dowd, who is a fucking delight.
Yes.
She shares with Annie that she's been to this psychic convention and she now knows how to hold seances to make a connection with her grandson who's drowned. Annie goes to Joan's apartment at one point. I have a lot of questions about this entire scene. First of all, Joan's front door to her apartment.
Full glass.
It's so rogue and upsetting. It looks like anybody could break into that house.
It looks like craft glass.
Yeah, it feels really unsafe and careless to me.
But also she has a demon on her side when you really think about it.
She is in a cult and she probably doesn't live there.
Not in the slightest.
So Annie goes to the glass door apartment. They hold this seance middle of the day.
Sunday afternoon, probably.
They turn off every fucking light in that apartment. And I would like to know what spirits have against light bulbs.
I don't know. But that is a very good question.
Why does it matter?
I think it just creates an atmosphere.
Joan's 6-year-old grandson, something tells me that he's not most Louis?
Louis is not attracted
to a full dark room with a single lit candle.
He might be. But it feels correct, your statement.
I think so.
It fits the bill.
But anyways, they hold this seance in the complete goddamn dark once again because this whole movie
has to be so dark.
And this is the first time that we see some sort of physical activity that is paranormal. And it's a shift in the movie. For me, it was. Because I couldn't really get grounded in what the genre of horror it was. If it was psychological, if it was paranormal, supernatural, like what the thing was. This is quite late in the movie, and it just feels like such a shift. And Annie kind of goes through that with you. Basically what happens is Joan's grandson moves a candle and then writes on a chalkboard, which is the most unappealing sound I have ever heard.
Nor do I want anybody to communicate to me via chalkboard.
Good to know. And so Annie is looking around the room. She looks under the table to try to see if this is something that's being done. And she finds nothing. Great. She freaks out, gets out of there. And as she's leaving, Joan is like, I get it. It's super unnerving. I totally understand. But here, take the stuff that you need in order to do it yourself should you change your mind.
What was it? A cup and a glass?
I think so.
You don't have that at home?
Was it blessed?
I don't know. But you know what? If you're going to give me a candle to take home, I will take it.
Annie pretty much immediately is like, you know what?
Why not?
Why not?
In the comfort of her own home, sure.
And she wakes up Peter and Stephen in the middle of the night, performs this seance, and in the seance, some things are moved, but Annie loses herself and becomes Charlie?
Which is the weirdest part. Because that doesn't happen. Like Joan doesn't become Louis, but all of a sudden she becomes Charlie, and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
And she starts just being like, Mom? Dad? Where am I? It's horrifying.
That was very scary, what you just did.
Thank you.
It kind of sounded like her, and I did not like.
I'm so sorry to have terrified you that way. I didn't mean
That's
to do
okay.
that.
But you really brought it full force, and I very much appreciate it.
Well, that's what I do for this podcast. So she becomes Charlie for a second, and then they throw a cup of water on her, and she
snaps out of
Strong. It. Once again, just a weird kind of left in the movie where it becomes very paranormal for a second, but we don't really know. And the thing about Annie's character that is very lightly explored throughout the movie is that she also suffers from some sort of mental health issues. Mm-hmm. Her mother had DID. Her brother was schizophrenic. We know through some emails that Steven sends and some other things that at the very least, Annie has experienced manic episodes. So we kind of go through this moment of, is this supernatural? Is Charlie coming through her? Or is she having a full break from reality? And that only gets worse into the end of the movie, which is the next...
Everything that happens for the last 20, 30 minutes on. I would say as soon as Peter comes home from being slightly possessed by Payman at school, banging his head into the desk, shit hits the fan. I think that's more of the pivotal moment where you're like, this is paranormal. It's like the confirmation. It's just downhill from there. We get everything and anything that could happen to this family in the next
20 minutes
of their lives.
Yeah. And that is why I didn't think I liked this movie at first. Kind of left feeling like, well, what the fuck was the rest of the movie?
And I wouldn't say that this movie I would consider a slow burn by any means, because there is definitely things happening like we've discussed.
But it's not until you can kind of see it, know what it's about, and put all the details together that it feels cohesive.
Yeah.
My first watch, a lot of it just felt disjointed to me.
No, that's totally fair. And I can see where you got that from because yes, I did feel disjointed, but I also felt like, sure, I had an understanding of what was happening. Once Peter comes home, he's resting in bed. Annie was somewhere. No, she was at home, but she didn't answer the phone.
And Annie had been at home discovering that the decapitated body of her dead mother is in the attic.
And very nonchalantly just kind of pushes the door and leaves it.
She's like, wow, what a smell. Lots of flies.
Yeah.
This is weird.
Pushes the door to the attic. We'll deal with it later, which we do. So Peter comes home because Steven brings him home from school because Annie did not pick up the phone. Annie is jogging along the car wondering what happened and puts him to bed. She's like, hey, Steven, my love, there's my mother's dead body upstairs. He goes up. He's like, oh, my God, like, what the hell? He literally has been in the dark this whole movie with anything paranormal happening because he's not part of that genetic line of it's supposed to happen to him. You know, he's just like kind of an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire.
And up until the point of the seance, he doesn't even know about the existence of Joan.
Oh, yeah.
Because Annie, every time she goes to grief counseling, tells Steven that she's going to the movies. We never get a clear reason about why she's doing that and why she doesn't tell him. Like, he just has no idea.
Yeah. Which is kind of sad.
Because he does not see this shit coming.
No. And it just kind of gets the best of him. And he, like I said, he's just caught in the crossfire of this cult massacre.
I like the way that this scene builds, though, because you're so used to in movies when one character is kind of descending into madness, that there's this moment where we get the confirmation that the thing isn't real. So you kind of expect that Steven's going to go up into the attic and the body's not going to be there, but that does not happen.
Yeah, he's like, why is there a body? But he also knows because earlier he was the one who found out that the grandmother's grave was desecrated.
And Annie does not know that.
And she does not know. And he believes that she put the body there. He's kind of trying to tie two and two together.
And they're having this exchange after he's left the attic where she's kind of walking him backwards into the living room. And it's so heartbreaking because he has left his body. He is trying to process what has happened. He thinks his wife did this. He has, for the last probably like 40 minutes of this movie, thought his wife is fucking losing it. And she is not helping her case.
No, because she is now also bringing Charlie's notebook, which she tried to light on fire earlier in the movie, ended up catching herself on fire. Her arm specifically when she threw the book in. So now she's trying to convince her husband.
He needs to burn the book.
Yes, because she can't do it because she started catching on fire.
And she's like reaching for him and kissing him and just outpouring of love. Like, you're the love of my life. And Steven is like, no.
Honestly, no idea what's happening.
No. And this part scares me because this is one of my biggest fears, that I will have a full break from reality. And I won't know that. Or that something is happening and it's really happening and no one believes me.
That is awesome. That's my biggest fear. Is that nobody believes you in a situation even though you are fully aware it's happening.
Yeah, even though there's a fucking decapitated body in the attic.
Yeah, that's terrifying. She eventually just rips that sketchbook out of her husband's hands and takes matters into her her own hands, literally
chucks
that book into the fireplace. Stephen
immediately
bursts into flames. Fully, head to toe, he is a human torch burning in the middle of the living room. Arms out, lit up like a Christmas tree.
Kind of beautiful.
It is beautiful. It really is the beginning of the roller coaster. Because there's the body and you're like, oh God, Peter just got hurt and now the husband is dead. We're starting the body count. So he burns to death. She stands there in just absolute shock. Kind of almost they're mimicking each other's positions. Stephen's burning. He falls to the ground. She kind of just leaves.
There has been moments in this movie where we see this sort of blue electric current that emanates through the screen. And that seems to break characters in and out of almost a possession like trance or draw them to something.
Specific locations,
yes.
items, etc. Yes.
The blue current happens and Toni Collette and her whole face kind of drops and we see that she is no longer herself.
Yes. I forgot about that. But that is what happens.
Peter wakes up in bed. He's like, what the fuck has happened? His face is busted.
Yes.
Because he smashed it on a desk. And he wakes up, and now it's late evening. And he's like, Mom, this is confusing because was he sedated?
I think that he probably just slept. Okay. Like, if you had some sort of head trauma, even when I have a headache, I'm just like, I gotta sleep.
Okay, as a person who had a really bad concussion one time, you actually cannot sleep.
I know. But maybe it was just like a rest up, baby boy, time for bed. He is looking around his room. He looks outside. The treehouse, which was formerly occupied mostly by Charlie, is lit up in a way that looks like she is living in there again, or some family member is in there with the heaters on. And as he sits up, another dark moment visually, because it is so dark, Toni Collette is clinging like Spider-Man in the corner of his bedroom. Fully
all fours
webbed up.
Sprawled out.
Yes. She is up there, not moving. Peter's just kind of looking around.
And he does not see her.
Yes.
This is the only thing that scared me because when I got home after this movie, I was living in an apartment at the time that had really tall ceilings. I was alone, and every time I walked through like a doorway or an archway, I just imagined that there was going to be a person up in the corner of the roof.
That's terrifying.
But
see, that's not the part that scared me the most. Mine's a little bit later in this long run of sequence.
Okay.
Or long sequence of events that happens. And so that's not the part that scared me.
Tell me everything.
Well, first off, I found that the scene that scared you eventually made it a little bit funny, was a laughing moment. Still kind of is. Because as Peter starts to move around more and turn towards different angles of his room, we see Toni Collette's character doggy paddle through the air in like this weird thing, like her feet or her hands or something is moving and it's just like sweeping motions in the air in a dog-like manner.
We have just the light from the window and it looks like she just kind of like doggy paddles through mid-air.
Yes.
But I have read now that she's actually crawling on the wall.
I don't believe that in the slightest.
Okay.
I'm only going to believe that she is doggy paddling mid-air to get to the door.
That's what I believe. It's what it looks like. That part's pretty funny.
Yes. And that kind of breaks me out of the moment. But then we get right back into it because he goes and finds his dad's body burnt to a crisp. Obviously, he only realizes that it's his father's body because of the wedding ring on it still. And out of nowhere, well, first off,
a lot happens.
A lot is happening. As he's looking at this body, we see the body of his father burnt to a crisp, a nice little snack. Behind him, in the archway of the door, is a naked man. Is that happening at this point?
Yes. And he's grinning.
Like
dick
cheek to
out.
cheek, fully naked.
Having the time of his life observing this scene.
Yes. This smiling character man we see at the beginning of the movie. He is sitting at the funeral, which ties it all together. But he is smiling so scarily. Peter does not see him. But lo and behold, Toni Collette comes out of nowhere. She is running. She is running for her life, but not.
No, she's rushing him.
Yes.
She's running at his life. Just turns around in time to see that his mother is rushing him.
Lunging.
She falls, which gives him a little bit of time, and he closes himself up into the attic, which we know is where the body of the grandmother is.
Yes. Beheaded. Once again, we love no heads.
So he is standing up there, and we can hear this repeated knocking, which he, at this point, doesn't really know what's happening with his mother. He thinks she's mad.
She's mad.
And so he's like, Mommy, I'm sorry. Please stop. But what's actually happening is that she is clinging to the roof.
Yes, repeatedly smashing her noggin into the entrance of the attic. Why not?
Super speed.
It just seems out of place, almost, because we haven't had anything like really supernatural other than like the seance happen.
Which is very paranormal light.
Yes. She stops.
He turns around.
There is just the outline of the grandmother's body. And in there is a photo of Peter with his eyes crossed out. Mm-hmm. He honestly doesn't know what's happening. Like, he just woke up from banging his own head into his desk at school to being at home being like, what is happening? Yeah. My father is dead. My mother is running at me, trying to perhaps kill me, probably. And now he's looking around this room, not sure what's happening. Lo and behold, Toni Collette's in the attic somehow.
And we just hear a little squidgy squidge.
Like, literally, though, at this point, you're like, what else?
What could possibly be happening?
What do we need now?
So you're not surprised, but you are surprised when she is flossing her own head off.
With who knows what, a piece of something. She's floating there, full white outfit, slowly sawing her own head off.
And it goes once and then back.
Yes.
And there's
left, right.
And then speed of light.
Let's pick it up. They are just maintaining direct eye contact this whole time. She's looking down on him, and it's almost like, you did this. Mm-hmm. But he's looking at her like just complete disbelief, like no idea once again what's happening.
The arterial spray in this scene is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's very violent.
Yes.
It is the only part of the movie that I've consistently had to close my eyes.
A lot of people have said that because I don't have a issue with gore. There's only been one movie where I've had to physically like compose myself because I thought I was going to pass out.
The sound of it honestly is worse than the sight of it. Yeah.
So anyways, she keeps going. He like quickly kind of snaps away and looks away from her because there's like a small rattle on a shelf or something up in the attic.
Which really, your attention can be taken that easily from your mom sawing her own head off.
Right? But also, if you were watching your mom sawing her head off and you heard something move behind you, in the circumstances you've just gone through, I also would maybe turn my attention away.
Zach, I would have hit myself over the head of rock.
Oh, hours ago.
Yeah,
I wouldn't. You're right. I would not be in this situation.
I would have never made it this far.
No, I would have been burnt to the crisp. But so he looks away. Something catches his attention. The attic is full. Naked people. The full cult is there. This is where he taps out.
This is where he did what any rational person would do. He flung himself out of a window.
Yep, he was gone. He said, see ya, goodbye.
And so he's dead on the ground.
And that electric blue current comes back.
The circle is complete. Peter is payment.
And they perform the holy ritual.
He goes up into the treehouse. All of his people are there. His parents' decapitated bodies. His sister's head on a mannequin type thing. Joan is there.
Yeah. Some of his friends from school are there.
Turns out.
They're in the cult. You name it, they're there.
Yeah, and now he's payment.
And that's kind of like that last of our favorite scenes because that last 20 minutes of that movie is a roller coaster. And I can't say roller coaster enough because that's all you can describe it
But
as.
It's a ride.
Wow.
I was confused at first. Mm-hmm. But truly it is very cut and dry.
Like Ari Aster, through reading through interviews, is like, there's nothing beyond what it is. There's no outside meaning of what it could be. It's like, there was a cult trying to get payment into a male's body. They did it. That's it. There
is metaphors around mental illness.
Yes.
But that's it. We are still supposed to take the plot. What's the word I'm looking for?
As is.
As is. That's it.
It is a demonic cult movie. Mm-hmm. No one was mentally ill. The actual story is, but the way that it's portrayed to us is that it could be mental illness.
Right.
If you didn't have the cult storyline.
And I think that could have been super well done as well.
Yes,
I think this could have been emotional or psychological thriller and exploration of mental illness in that way. Mm-hmm. But it is a cool plot device that it's not. Her brother, we know, has died by suicide because he was schizophrenic, and he kept saying that his mom was trying to put people inside of him. Well, we know now that was just true.
Yes.
Her mother having DID was just her mother being in a cult.
Yeah.
Toni Collette's mental struggles are probably also some version of demonic possession and all of that stuff.
But also her trying to save her family because she has some sort of weird subconscious understanding where she's trying to save her family. Mm-hmm. Because
on some level she knows.
Yes.
And that really is all it is.
Charlie's death was at the hands of the cult. Everybody's death was at the hands of the cult, all in all.
It was just a means to this end of getting this demon king into a body.
Wow. With it being scary, let's say, what would you rate this?
3 out of 10.
I would say maybe like a 3 or 4. There is some elements of like scary parts where like you jump, compose yourself of what just happened, but it's not particularly scary.
Right. When we say scary, we mean the fear factor, heart racing.
Yes, where you scared to continue on.
Yes. Did not happen for me in this.
No. But afterwards, I think for both of us, it did affect us on a scare level. You said you had to go into every room
feeling as if there was
someone in there. And mine was when Peter was in the attic and all those bodies showed up, or there was the one standing in the doorway. That was my fear, is that somebody was in a doorway, because I lived in a terrifying house.
Yes, you did.
So we both had similar things where there was something there that wasn't supposed to be there.
Right.
Scare-wise, it scared me after, but not during.
So that is a different rating in and of itself,
Yes.
which we call the unsettling factor.
Yes.
That, for me, was probably... It's higher, but it's not incredibly high. Like, I would say it's a 6 to 7.
That's what I was going to say.
Because it lingered for me for about 2 days, but it didn't scar me. And I have seen movies that will sit with me forever.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is some gross, gruesome scenes. There are some little spooky moments, but I wouldn't say that it's terrifying.
No.
Like, I wasn't scared. What is your relationship with the story? What do you think you rate this? Were you attentive the whole time?
Oh, compelling factor.
Yes.
How engaged was I? I saw this in theaters originally. So in that environment, you have no choice but to be fully engaged.
Yes.
And I was.
Me too.
The first time I saw it, which was quite a while later, I didn't find it that engaging. But it was because I felt like I knew it. The third time that I watched it, which I did for this, looking for more detail, really wanting to pay attention, very compelling, very, very engaging. Can be rare when you're trying to watch a movie at home.
No, yeah, I
So
agree.
this for me was probably a 7.
I think when I first watched this, 8 closer to 9 with compelling and how intrigued I was.
Yeah.
Even though, yes, we have seen cult movies before, it felt new and fresh.
I agree with that, 100%.
We did have that whole element of mental illness, but portrayed in a way that I felt wasn't damaging to a lot of...
It wasn't using mental illness as a villainizing a scapegoat or anything like that.
But now, after I've seen it numerous times, I mean, you obviously become less intrigued or captivated, but there are other movies where I've seen them numerous times and I could love every minute of it. I would say 6 or 7 now.
Yeah. So our overall rating system, where did this fall between a paper cut and a full-on bloody massacre for you?
With looking at how unsettling it was, and, you know, it not being as scary as what people think or what it's marketed as, it's less than a full massacre, but it's not close to a paper cut. There are some parts where I was like, yeah, this could be changed, you know, as every movie. But overall, I think it's very good.
Yeah.
But not a full home run.
I would say that it's like, we're at sleepaway camp. They took out the counselors, but they let the campers live. So it was half-mass.
Yeah.
Tragic. But could be worse.
Yeah. You make it out alive. You have trauma to live with, but...
Yeah, it's scarring. Definitely. But you're going to live a life after.
Yeah.
Ari Aster, Hereditary.
What a man. What a legend.
And that's the first film here on the Bloody Podcassacre. We have so many things coming up. We're so excited.
So excited. Can't wait to share it all.
If you guys are compelled, follow us on social media. We are at Podcassacre on Instagram and Twitter.
And also TikTok.
And if you would like, if you have any suggestions, you can send us a DM there. You can also send us an email, and that will be listed on our social media as well.
We would love to hear anything and everything related to horror. Your experiences with Hereditary.
What movies really sold you on horror as a genre?
What is something that you would recommend to us?
What's your number one recommended horror film?
We want to hear it. Until then, evil is hereditary.